Step into the world of success with your brand amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. I have had the privilege of being on my next guest, Dave Polykoff's podcast, Brand Science. And as you may know, I love everything brand. I could talk about branding all day. I feel like we have a lot of similarities in the way that we found our careers. And so I'm just really excited to have a person from Philly, which is close to my heart as well, Dave Polykoff, on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I know we share a lot of branding similarities, and we've nerded out a lot on my podcast and after the podcast about branding. So there's a lot of good stuff to talk about today.
Yeah. Well, and I know you just launched a new offer. I want to get into that because I think it's really important for people to also understand what it takes to launch an offer and then what the work you do afterwards. Because that's one of the things with brand, right? People build something, they think everybody's just going to show up, but that's not the end all. You have to have that foundation. But let's get into your background because you also have some other companies. You do a lot of different things, but they all kind of revolve around the same hub.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back, where it really all started was I went to a state school in PA, and we needed to have an internship our junior year summer.
Cool.
And I got this advertising internship, but it was unpaid. So, I needed some beer money. So I found a paid internship in Westchester, Pennsylvania. It's like right up the road from me. And this was a small little team. I was employee number 3 at the time. Ooh. And the gist of the company was like direct response marketing. This was, landing pages, driving advertisements to landing pages and trying to sell you some sort of product, right? And the kind of other side to that business was like online reputation management and ORM space. So if people aren't familiar, basically it's a service that if you were to Google your name or your business name and you didn't like the search results that came up, this service would be able to, suppress those or maybe replace them with better results. So what I like to say is I went to college for 4 years. I studied marketing, and this was around the time like 2008 to 2012.
Yeah. Where
marketing is going in a completely different direction with like online marketing. Like Twitter's a thing now, YouTube's a thing, Facebook's a thing. And this concept of like social media marketing is really starting to pop off. But I was going to college at a time where we were still learning like the antiquated ways of marketing. And so the product placement, promotion, all of that kind of stuff, which is, you still use, but, it was just very old school style. My teachers, I don't even think had social profiles and things like that. So I'm learning this like antiquated way of marketing, but then I get this internship in this company that's like at the forefront of what current marketing is. And I learned more in that summer about digital marketing, direct response marketing, SEO, online reputation management, and branding than I did my 4 years at college. Yeah. So it really it did a few things. One is it just gave me like a master's degree in the idea of branding and marketing and all that. But since I was employee number 3, it also showed me what it meant to have a young, scrappy startup and what it is like to really build a product, build something from the ground up. So I was there that junior summer. I had to go back for my senior year. They didn't want me to go back. They were like, just, skip it, come back, work full time. But I was like, I owe it to my mom. I need to get that degree.
Yeah.
So I went back for one more year and I got the degree. I graduated on a Saturday. I started working for this company again on a Monday. And during that time, I was employee number 3. I think we added on like another maybe 10 employees at that time. And once I graduated that summer, we went from like maybe 13 employees to like 113 employees over the next like 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So I saw this thing
explode.
And the name of the company was brand.com. And this was one of the fastest growing companies in Philly at the time. We had the mayor come out and like do a ribbon cutting and all this stuff. So we were like the cool tech company of Philly at the time. And again, brand.com, we were focused on helping you kind of craft your online reputation through quality content, publishing on, high quality publications and the like. Now, we went through some variations of business models, and unfortunately, there was a big pivot a couple of years in where we didn't really make it out of that pivot. And so I saw the company go from 3 employees to 103 employees, and then right back down to 3 employees pretty quickly. Yeah. I mean, I was literally seeing them sell the furniture to make payroll some days. But again, that shows you just like the ebbs and flows of a startup. And it was like a master's degree and what it means to, start something, see how I can, raise money for it, iterate on products, pivot, things like that. And my role at that time was largely in the kind of software tech side of things, but for like content. So we had a large editorial team creating a bunch of content, and I was leading a development team that was creating content technology, this platform, like early day CMS, content management system for all this content creation. So that was like my toe into the universe of like content creation, streamlining content, scaling content, what it means to have things in place for editorial control and all that. And from there, went on to a few more startups that dealt with this, similar spaces, content tech, platforms that helped people be able to purchase sponsored content directly onto some of the top publications in the space, like Business Insider. We were working with the Associated Press. We took meetings for the New York Times. This is like sponsored content. This is where publications were going out of business.
Yeah.
And they needed money. And basically our service and tech was like, here's content and money. We're here to try to save you guys. So was that for...
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I want to ask a question about the pivots, because that's something that when you start a business, I feel like you might have an idea of your customer persona. You might know what your offer is going to be. But then once you start testing it and really, getting past the testing, in the testing, you might think, okay, yes, I have a viable offer. But then you get into reality, you've launched, now you have to see where you really want to pivot. So I want to go back to that first company, brand.com. And I know also we sometimes get the shiny object. What's the new thing that we have to pivot to? And that can necessarily not be aligned with our initial goals. So I want to know more a little bit about the pivots that you went through, and what was that pivot that kind of broke the company?
Yeah, no, it's a really crucial point to kind of harp on here, because largely early on in the business model, again, it was online reputation management, which meant our clientele were people that typically didn't have very good search results, and for a reason, right? Like they maybe did something that should be seen by people, right? Sometimes. And then other times it's people who are just like disgruntled employees or whatever it is. And anyone can go online and post something anywhere and it can rank for your name, even if the thing's not true. But, some of those clients, did the bad thing or whatever. And so there was a certain clientele we had early on that as we were growing as a company, maturing as a company, those were the clients that were really paying our bills, because those are the ones that, have the biggest need for that service. But as we were trying to mature as a company and take on funding and grow and get better partners and such, it was tougher to do that because of the type of client that we were servicing. And so we needed to make a decision of, okay, do we keep on our, cash cow right now, our golden goose of client, or do we pivot and try to do the same thing, but with a more mature, maybe this is the wrong word, but respectful type of client? And we ultimately made the decision to try to go kind of upmarket, pivot the type of client we were going to be working with and focused on, which meant we needed to pivot our service offering in a way. And we started to try to offer different services to meet that clientele. So basically we had built the plane, we were in flight, and then we realized we didn't necessarily want that type of passenger on our plane. And so we tried building another plane that's next to our current plane. And it was a balancing act of trying to keep the lights on with our current book of business while no longer taking on that type of client and bringing on the new type of client under the new service that could replace that revenue that was lost. But as we know, when you're building or even launching a new product, there's like time for product market fit that the cash isn't going to come in as steadily. Like as you mentioned, like you may have thought you knew what the industry wanted. You put it out there and you're banking on that cash flow and you realized, oh, wait, this isn't right. This isn't what they want. And the cash flow is not coming in. So it was kind of a juggling act that just didn't land very well. And ultimately it just continued to snowball down and spiral down. So I think kind of the lesson there is, I don't know, actually, it's kind of tough, but the idea being that like, if you kind of have your cash cows, I think sometimes it's like when you can kind of correlate it to when people have a full-time job and that's their W-2 salaried benefits income. And they're wondering, when can I take the leap into entrepreneurship? Because I'm getting that money in the door. Maybe I hate my job and I hate the grind that I have to go through. I hate my boss and I want to do something on my own and I want to launch my own product. But they're worried, well, if I take that leap too early and I cut off my revenue stream, I'm going to, not have any money to live on. So that's kind of the correlation there, I think, where I would say, stick around as much as you can until you find that product market fit, until you've proven your model to be able to make money. And until that new revenue stream is now replacing your existing quality of life standards, what you need to pay for. And at that point, it's safe to make the pivot. But we kind of just cut the cord. We, as they say, burned the ships and just went all in and it didn't work out.
It reminds me of when I had a PR firm that I built up during the pandemic, and then it was doing well, right? I had lots of clients, but then I had 2 clients who didn't pay their bills. Then I decided to merge with another agency thinking that it would be a fit for my clients and found out it wasn't a fit for my team or my clients. And that was a really big humbling lesson of like, I'm still there and my team's still there. So of course but when they saw the other agency or interacted with people from the other agency, they're like, these people aren't really going to give me the same level of care. So it's so hard to figure that out and figure out what's going to work until you do it. And hopefully you're able to take all those lessons to the next startup and the next startup and then your own projects.
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately what happened was again, that was a paid masterclass. I was getting paid to be there, right? It was my job, but I was, taking notes the whole time. I was very young, I was right out of college and I was in some of these meetings that I guess nowadays it's not crazy to be in because, people are starting businesses at, Stanford when they're 19 and such. But, I was 21, 22 in investor meetings and boardroom meetings talking about how we're going to grow this multi-million-dollar company and all that kind of stuff. And at the time I thought, I do everything. But, looking back, you're like, wow, I do very, very little. But yeah, I'm taking notes and I'm seeing what worked, what didn't. Went on to a couple other startups, and then ultimately felt I had enough of the experience to start my own thing, and had all of that history and all my notes prepared to kind of take along with me. And you still obviously fail 100 times when you do it yourself. It looks so easy maybe when other people do it. It's easy to claim success when someone else is leading the ship, but when you become the captain and all the decisions are on you, it's a lot of trial and error still.
Okay, I'm going to go totally on a tangent now. And then we're going to get back on track. But
let's do it.
The other thing is education. And I am a grad school professor, but I also know that it's so hard to update the curriculum because it's digital media management. And so, you create the curriculum for the entire program and it's outdated immediately. And we're having to find new things to add in. And how do we keep on top of all of the different stuff that's going on, particularly with Gen AI these days? But it's that push-pull of really, it's the practical experience that helps you really get your feet wet and understand how to be in business and what to do. But we also still have to have those initials behind our names to get jobs. I was speaking to somebody yesterday who was looking at computer science and wanted to do a certification program, maybe a 6 to 8 month program. And all the companies are like, no, we want to see that you have, the bachelor's and then the master's. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that that's still going to be a model of the future where people need to get a 4-year and then get, continuing education? Or with technology moving so rapidly, will it become a place where you can just keep getting certified in different platforms and different programs and modalities?
Yeah, this is actually a topic I love to talk about because, again, I went to college and learned, spent money to be there. And I think I was actually talking to my business partner about this the other day, where out of all the classes that I took in my college career, I think maybe 2 or 3 really stuck with me to today. Like one of which was like a sales class, and it taught me like the best practices for how to be on a sales call and all that kind of stuff. But 90% else of everything that I did at college education wise, I don't know if I really got the bang for my buck.
Yeah.
And, obviously everyone has different experiences. And, if you're going to be a doctor, that's a different experience than just like, a business degree or whatever. But I think we're in a transitional period right now where education does not need to come from a university. Now, obviously it depends on what you're focused on. Again, if you're going to be a doctor, you can't just watch a few YouTube videos and expect to get, the MD at the end of your name. But if you're in the realm of wanting to just create like digital products and market and sell them online, you don't need a bachelor's degree to do that anymore. You can find a bachelor's degree on YouTube, on some of these educational, marketplaces where there's so many courses out there from people who have done it and, have tried and true solutions. So obviously it's always like it depends, because when you have people's life or money on the line, you need to make sure that you've gone through the ringer and have proven yourself. But if you want to like open a bake shop, if you want to, be a personal trainer, these aren't things that you need to put out $80K to a university to do anymore. Education is readily available. And yeah, so I would say, obviously it comes down to like what you're trying to do with your life and how important it is to make sure that you have highly professional on-site training to do it. But I will say, for the majority of people who just want to get into like content creation or be able to use their experiences and translate that into digital products, that, coaching, consulting, courses, those types of services, then, I don't think you necessarily need the traditional university route to do that. And that's where like personal branding comes into play and all that kind of stuff, which, eventually is kind of where my career took me.
Yeah. Well, and of course, again, I'm saying this as somebody who teaches grad school, who is getting her MBA from Villanova right now. So because I have to have the M to be able to teach full time at this level.
Sure.
But so I have specific goals, but a lot of the classes that are really engaging are the ones on AI, because my professor works in the field, has worked in the field for 20 years, built this curriculum, and is teaching me everything that's like of the moment. And so that's what's valuable, but it is hard. I understand we need to have these base concepts, but like you said, we can learn them from other ways. You can go to the SBA, you can take online courses, LinkedIn learning, right? All these different modalities. But let's get back to the branding and the
just to like an additional add-on too is the ability to learn one-to-one through like courseworks or, even just like memberships and group courses and such. You get to kind of democratize how you learn in a way. Like when you go to a university, you don't really choose, to a degree, you don't really choose the professor. You don't choose how they teach it, and you're kind of locked into that ideology. If you wanted to learn about AI and you went to, a university, you're kind of locked into whatever the curriculum is of learning AI at that university. But through personal brands and those that are out there that have kind of mastered AI and now are translating their expertise into coursework, into memberships, we're kind of spoiled by how much selection we have now, where we can kind of say, okay, I vibe with the way this person teaches, or I love the way that this person is using AI. They've proven to be able to use it by the way that they're posting content and the systems that they're demonstrating. And so it's kind of like a Netflix option, of what do I want to, which route, who do I want to choose today, of wanting to learn, wanting to master something. You get to kind of choose who you want to learn from. So that's another reason I love kind of the era that we're in right now is, there's kind of a democratization of education. Obviously, people need to prove that they're able to live up to it. But yeah, I just think, at universities, sometimes you're kind of just pigeonholed into one class, one professor, one way of doing things, and maybe the ideology of that university. But if you kind of go the other route, you have a little bit more of a choice and selection.
And to keep going on this tangent, I was telling you right before we got on that I just was visiting universities with my daughter because she's known what she wants to do forever. People who listen to the podcast regularly have heard me talk about her. And we went to Oxford and Cambridge, and what's interesting is those two universities do have that model where you might have lectures, but you also have, at Oxford, they call it tutors. I forget what they call it at Cambridge, but you have these sessions where it's maybe two of you with one mentor, essentially, where you're reading and you're writing papers and you're having these really great discussions with somebody who is a specialist in your field and the best of the best. And so what you just said really describes a very pedigreed education in some ways, but like you said, the democratization of it, where you get to have these really rich experiences, which is exactly what they're doing at these really high caliber schools that people that, I couldn't get into, certainly, but these schools that top people want to get into. So,
oh, it's great. Yeah, it wasn't my experience, but I'm glad that that's kind of the way that some of these universities are evolving.
Yeah. Some of them, not very many, but I'm glad that we do have the ability to kind of see who do we gel with, who do we want to learn from, and how can we continue that, and how do we keep meeting new people in the field? Because I think that's where I get a lot of excitement and energy from is this podcasting, teaching. That's how we met, was meeting on your podcast. And then I was like, you have to come on mine and talk about what you do. And so, your podcast is Brand Science. Did your podcast come before you started your various business endeavors, at the same time, after?
No, I mean, I was doing content creation, online content creation, around the time of me starting at the time it was called Presto Media, and we were a content agency. So we would create content for online blogs, news publications, things like that. And so content was just like always in my blood. Again, going back to like the content management systems, technology wise, to actually creating it myself, to helping others get content for their brands and such. But I had always seen podcasts, and this was probably back when I first started my agency, was around 2016. And podcasting was like a thing, but it wasn't, there was,
it wasn't what it is.
Over 2020, everyone got a podcast, right? Yeah. Like, so it took a few more years before it to like really blow up. And I think even like the technology to support podcasting really came into its own over the last, 3-4 years with like better mics that aren't $1 million and, softwares like Riverside and Zoom and all that. But early on, I would create like talking head videos and the like. But I really, how I started creating the podcast was as I got more invested into my personal brand and providing services to others for their personal brand. I needed to, walk the walk and show how, kind of lay out the steps and the path to how to create quality content consistently. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to be teaching others how to create quality content, then, I need to, also invest into those various areas where, content can be created. So I was like, let me try my hand. And like everyone, we go through this where we're like, oh, I should start a podcast. And then it's just, you kind of kick the can down the road farther and farther, right? Like, oh yeah, once I get the backdrop, once I get the right mic, once I get the camera, one side type of stuff. And I think just one day I was like, you know what? I'm just going to schedule my first guest interview. And that way, if it's on the calendar, there's no backing out.
Yeah.
And, just kind of book it, schedule it, and I'll figure out everything in the meantime. And so I just did that, earlier this year because I'm fairly new with the podcast. But I just did that. Got a few close, friends and colleagues that are in the personal branding space, content creation space, and just got it on the calendar and figured everything else out after. And it's been quite the learning journey as we've talked about, after our podcast together, you were giving me a lot of advice on what to look forward to and what to avoid. So still learning.
Yeah. but it's such a great journey. So let's talk about where you are with your agency now. And so you said you had Press2 and then it's evolved and you do a few different things, but primarily, right, still content, still that you're a thought leader in that space. You've known the in and outs of it since you started your career. So what does that look like today?
Yeah. So like I said, we started the agency out as Presto Media, which is, content creation easily created, Presto Media. And it's also a shout out to my dad, who has been a magician for 40 years. And so it was a little bit of a wink to him as well.
Nice.
But so, yeah, we evolved that over time. And again, going back to we had some pivots along the way and learned about how to pivot a business and how not to. But it was more so we like to call them kind of evolutions of the service. And we were creating content at the time for businesses that really saw content as an expense and not an investment. And our core belief as a company is that content is an investment into your brand, and whether that be a company or an individual. And we try to preach that, and these businesses just weren't listening. And those are the businesses that eventually went out of business. And so we had that core belief for so long that we were like, all right, we need to evolve our business to work with those that really understand the value of content and want to invest into their brand. And so we started that route from B2B, and we work with, higher end publications or SaaS companies or just services that knew the value of content, wanted to publish it on their website to attract qualified and high value leads and ultimately users and clients. And so we were doing that for a while, and that took the many different shapes. Again, it's figuring out the hook, it's figuring out the value, it's figuring out the format of content that not only a consumer of the content is going to love, but also Google, which is hand in hand the same thing, right? And so we learned so much in terms of how to craft a quality piece of content that a user and a viewer, a consumer, and also an algorithm would love. And then over time, to promote these services, we invested into our own individual personal brands to translate the thought leadership that we had in the space online so that we can attract our clients. We kind of found more of a passion for that than we did working with brands. And so we love brands. We love, companies. We love to see companies thrive. But when we found that working with an individual and being able to impact an individual's life and seeing the impact immediately, there was no bureaucracy of a company and all that kind of stuff. That was just, we woke up excited every day to do that. So we, again, kind of took everything we know about branded content, about how content should be formatted to drive an action, and started to apply it more at the individual level, which is what evolved into ZenPost. And that's more of our personal branding offer now. So we focus on messaging for individuals. We all have a rough idea of who we are, what our value is, what makes us unique, but we really need a third party to tell us that, because it's very easy for us to say all the bad things about us, in our mind, but it's much more difficult to understand the good things. So we help clarify your message and then give you the blueprint in terms of your content strategy and your sales funnel to not only attract clients with your content, but then actually do something with that attention once you get it, convert that into, an email subscriber, and that email subscriber into a customer, whether it's a sale or, a paid customer of a product or something like that. And so this has been, something we've rolled out over the last, 5 or 6 months. And, this has been just, it's one of those things where even as an individual, you feel you're always kind of in the right arena of what you should be doing with your career. Yeah. But then finally you just make that large quality, I'm going to use the word pivot again, but a pivot in a way that the puzzle pieces align, and you're like, okay, I know this is what I should be doing. This is aligned with my values and my interests. And, that's luckily where I find myself today.
Yeah. It's so interesting how these twists and turns take us there. And because I'm in the same space of I really love being a professor. I really love teaching, and I love podcasting, and let's see how I can put all these things together. And it's that, and I'm going to be 50 at the end of the year. And I love the fact that I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, I feel so excited to get up every day now and to do the work that I do and to invest my time and helping my students learn like the best and the most and like the most updated things and learn from them because some of them are experts in the field. They're just trying to get that extra master's degree. So I just love that you're in this space. And I also, we've seen the trend. Branding is just so much more important than it used to be, and knowing the person behind a brand. So even if somebody works, because I've had a lot of people come to me, women who are mid-career, who are saying, I've had this great career at Oracle or XYZ company, and I've done everything I can, and I don't know what my what's next is, but they haven't developed their personal brand. So even if you are in the construct of a corporation, you still have to develop your personal brand. So I'd love to hear, because I know you have your new offer and you have your Easy AF content toolkit as well. And I'm going to say also, for somebody like me who's in this field, I still need other people to help me tell me what to focus on and how to narrow down what I'm talking about.
A therapist needs a therapist, you know?
So what kind of people are you mostly working with? Is it the entrepreneur? Is it the person who's mid-career and realizes they need to make their own path? Is it kind of an amalgamation of everybody?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, but I want to go back to your point about how the W-2 employee who maybe doesn't have an offer, a traditional offer that they're selling, another way to look at it is your skill set, your ability to add value to a business is your offer. So everyone is required to have a personal brand. What you do with that personal brand can vary depending on whether you want to take the traditional W-2 route or venture out into entrepreneurship and have your own offer. But yeah, I mean, what we say is if you want to, one, job security, having that personal brand so that you are attracting, attention to not just yourself, but then as a byproduct, the company you work for, people are going to want to have you stick around a little bit more, right? Yeah. Also, too, when it comes time for that raise, the value that you're adding to the business outside of just the work that you put in during office hours. And then maybe you do want to move on and get another job. I mean, the ability to not just land that job, but get a better paycheck for it just is exponentially more, the opportunity there is so much more when you have that personal brand established. Wow. We've seen that time and time again of people who have been heads of departments at one company, but then they invest into their personal brand and get like VP, roles other places. So yeah, if you're a W-2 employee, don't think that you're exempt from needing to invest in your personal brand. It's really, and it's one of those investments that maybe today you don't necessarily believe that you're going to be in the entrepreneurship world, but the way that the world is moving, it's so easy to just provide an offer, get a revenue stream outside of your W-2 paycheck that, all roads kind of are leading down that direction regardless. So maybe not today, this isn't right for you, but I think, down the line, it may be, and having that personal brand in your pocket is going to make things way easier. But to answer your question of who we work with today, our ideal client and who we best serve today is a coach, consultant, agency owner, solopreneur. So these are, when I say coaches, mainly, business consultants and coaches, those who have, this is ideal too, those who have a unique method for being able to do something. And this kind of goes back to how I qualify who I like to have on my podcast is I say the best personal brand, like the litmus test for a personal brand, is if you would be a really great podcast guest. Because as a podcast host, you want someone who is just very well informed of their industry, up to date, can speak intelligently on their topic, but also has something unique and interesting to say about their industry or the way of them being able to solve a problem in their industry. And so the more unique that you're able to solve a problem, the easier it is to promote your personal brand online, because people are, they hear the same old thing, the keto diet or whatever, right? But if you come along with something that is just a unique way of doing it. It kind of it wakes up the brain a bit more, and people are more interested in trying something new than trying the same thing they hear doesn't work 100 times.
Yeah.
So largely it's that coach consultant, a solopreneur who has found a unique way of being able to solve a common problem. And again, the best ways that we kind of are able to find that person is usually when they've created some sort of like long form asset around that. So it might be they've written a book, they have a course about it, they have a podcast. And these are people that are already translating their expertise and thought leadership into some form of content or an asset, but they don't know how to do it at like the LinkedIn post level. They don't know how to translate it into micro content, and then they don't know how to translate that attention from the content into actually, sales and customers overall. And that's where we come in.
Yeah. So I have a couple of questions. One is, with AI, a lot of people think that they can just prompt engineer their way into, even if they don't really understand prompt engineering, they can just put a few things and get a whole bunch of blog posts or content that, might work, might not. So I want to hear your perspective on AI and content creation. And then the other question is for the person who, just doesn't know where to start. I know that my team is always like, hey, can you check this schedule? Can you send us a video about this or that? And I'm always like, yes, in the future, sometime I will get that done because it's hard because I really want to focus on having my podcast. And I know that I can do more with the micro content from the podcast. But what are some things that you have to say when people have those two objections of like, oh, I just don't have the time. I don't know where to start. And then, oh, I can just have AI do it for me.
Yeah. Well, starting on the AI point of things, it's very anti-personal brand when AI is doing it for you. Now, there's people out there that can say, hey, have AI write in your tone of voice and all that kind of stuff. And how I say AI should be part of your content strategy is twofold. One is for helping you be it is the smart editor in the room, like your smartest friend who's always in the room. So when you go to create content and you just kind of want to lean over and be like, hey, Jerry, what's like a really good metaphor for blank? That's where AI comes in, right? It helps you just be able to get rid of that white page blinking cursor syndrome where it can spark ideas. It can take you from 0 to 1. And then that's kind of the second part of it too, is like once you're able to kind of get that initial template of what to write about, AI can help fill in some gaps there or help you kind of get a first draft. But then you have to inject your uniqueness, experiences, personality into it. One really great way I've seen AI be used is helping you decipher quality content through your own words. So for podcasting, we talked about this actually with podcasting, where it's a long form piece of content where you're giving thought leadership and it's captured through video or audio. And then there are AI tools where you can upload that video or audio and it will transcribe it, analyze it, and then kind of give you the nuggets of like, this is a really good thing that you said here, or here's like a highlight that you should post. And that's another area where I think AI is really great in content creation is we're not all very creative, but we can speak intelligently, hopefully, ideally, about our industry for 10, 15 minutes, but then being able to like parse through that and find the nuggets that we think people will enjoy, that can be time consuming. We might not be as creative to know what that is. So that's where I think AI comes in. It's a time saver there, and it can be kind of like your editor, your editor in chief in some cases. So that's what I would say. But when it comes to like AI actually creating the content for you, I know there's a lot of people that kind of like make their dinner money on selling that stuff.
Right.
But I just think that they're missing the point of like a personal brand, like what's going on there. Yeah. It's very good for helping you go from 0 to 1, but I would not lean on that as the de facto content creator, especially, and I'll make this last point with it, especially because over time, the best way to learn how to create quality content is to consistently try to create quality content. Like you have to get the reps in. You have to as I say, it's kind of like the puberty phase where like you come into it and you feel really awkward because you're trying things and you think this sounds cool and it really doesn't. And maybe you shouldn't have worn that shirt type of thing. But over time, you come into your own, you figure out your voice. And the only way you're going to do that is that you have to do it yourself. So that's my opinion on the AI stuff. In terms of people who want to create content and get into the content game, but feel they don't have the time, or maybe they're not as creative, that's where, again, if you're not creating content at all, a 0 to 1 is 1,000% more than what you're currently doing.
Right.
So don't overthink it in the sense of like, oh, I need to be doing what my favorite creator is doing. I need to be creating these fancy pieces of art when I post something. Really start with the most basic types of content. Don't overthink it. Don't over edit it. Focus more on the informational value of your content over the production value of your content early on. And make sure that you're speaking on-brand messaging to the right audience. And as soon as you're able to, and do that consistently, and then once you're able to check that off, then you can move on to the production value side of things. And the way that you do that from 0 to 1 is by having a content strategy in mind. So knowing who you're speaking to, what you want to say, and how you want to break that up throughout the week. And once you actually have a content strategy, which is like a content schedule, it's less about waking up every morning and go, oh, what should I post today? Because you already know what you're going to post.
Yeah.
And then once you already know what you're going to post, it's about avoiding trying to reinvent the wheel every time that you go to create a post. So this is templates are your friend, right? The hidden secret in the content game right now that, I'm sorry if I'm giving it away, but your favorite content creators online, all they're doing is they're going and finding posts that have performed really well. They're analyzing what the format is, the template of that post. They're taking the format and they're turning it into a template, and then they're injecting their experiences and information into that format, and they're clicking publish.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how should I format this? What should I talk about? All that kind of stuff. Really, the trick right now, especially going from 0 to 1, where you don't want to have to be some like content strategist, is to just look at what's already performing well and then put your version of it in there. So know what you want to post. Don't overproduce in terms of like, oh, I'm going to get like 5 posts per day out. Like if you're going 0 to 1, literally go from 0 to 1 post per day. And now that you know what you're going to post, create templates. So every time you go to create that post, it's really more like paint by numbers. And again, this is twofold. One is it decreases time and effort and the mental energy it takes to create content. But it's also it's like the training wheels for your content creation, where you're seeing what makes a good post. Why did this post work? What was the hook? What was the value? What was the call to action? Like you're seeing through examples what a quality post looks like, and then you're injecting your brand on top of it. And then over time, you can take the training wheels off and you can start creating your own quality content. But at first, don't try to like do it all yourself and, fumble it, get frustrated, flip over the desk and go, maybe content creation isn't for me.
Yeah. Well, and that's where you come in, right? Because you're helping somebody understand what they should be putting out, helping them create that content. So you just launched this in the past 5-6 months, you said. So what does that look like? Because it's one thing to be a personal branding expert, have a personal brand, have your podcast, all these things that make you the expert. But then how do you find the right people? Because I think something that people always forget is you still have to have the marketing machine, the sales funnel, the PR, all these other tools that you have to utilize to make sure that you are being seen by the people you want to be seen by.
Yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, who do you want to be seen by is obviously the big
right.
Question to have it answered already. And I think you may have mentioned there in terms of like qualifying who an ideal client is and making sure that that's represented in your content, because early on, bringing on the wrong client, I think, is just as important to avoid than to bring on the right client, because that's a waste of time and you're not going to get a testimonial and you're not going to be able to help them and all that. So yeah, we're really qualifying who our ideal client was a important part of this rollout. And that comes down to our landing page. I mean, we spent a lot of time really crafting the messaging of zenpost.com, which is just a one-page landing page that basically outlines or does outline the benefits that you get, the transformation you're going to have, what's in the box, if you will, in terms of like the deliverables. And then most importantly, like, who is this for and who is it not for? Because, you want to qualify and then you want to disqualify.
Right.
And in some cases, it's even when it comes down to like the monetary side of things, you might be qualified from a need perspective, but not qualified from a financial perspective because, what we provide is very valuable. Like I say, it's the greatest investment, in my opinion, you can make in your life is in yourself. And that's what we provide. So, it's not pennies to be able to make that transformation. And so it's been a lot of making sure that we had that keystone piece, which is our landing page, that really qualifies and informs what it is you actually get. And then, really attacking it from multiple angles, which has been mostly we're focused on LinkedIn because that's where our ideal client is, which, goes into the overall content strategy as well as knowing the one platform to focus on and kind of ignoring the rest early days. So for us, that's LinkedIn, and just being consistent with not just valuable content, but and this is something that's difficult for a lot of people, but promotional content too. So, you can add the FAQ 101 content and, the personal content, but at the end of the day, you still have an offer you need to sell. So being consistent with letting people know that you have an offer and, raising your hand. And mostly that's just been people DMing right there on the platform and people kind of going to the website and filling out our application form and such. But then, also promotions on things like podcasts, whether that be a guest opportunity or my own podcast. The problem with those things is they're not as timely, whether it even be my own podcast or someone else's podcast, they're usually backed up for months in terms of when something actually gets published. So it's, if you have a promotion going on right now, and you film something now or you record something now, sometimes that podcast doesn't come out for months later. So that's a little bit more difficult to promote sometimes. But it's really about being consistent and the fact of being okay with letting people know that you have something of value and you charge money for it, because a lot of people aren't okay with posting that type of content. They feel icky and salesy, but it's the only way people know that it's okay to reach out to you about your offer. So that's been important.
Yeah. And what about the difference between video content? Like how much video content should you post versus written content? Because I know obviously every social media platform, even LinkedIn, is getting in the game of video, short form video. But then we also have, of course, maybe not hopefully as much on LinkedIn, but the viral trends where businesses are like, oh, I need to hop on all these viral trends, which may or may not be good for your business, depending on what your business is.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to what you should be posting from like a content type perspective, that's really case specific. But I will say it's important that if you're going to be spending time with these people, that your client actually likes you as a person. So that's where we say you should be creating video content, because that's the best way for someone to understand who you are, your personality, the little things you can't get through a text post or, just a static photo. So that's where I would say video is very important for that purpose, that if you know your ideal client, you're going to be spending a lot of time in person or even like Zoom calls in interacting with them and engaging with them. It's important that they kind of get a sense of what your personality is like prior to. And sometimes that's why people use you to begin with, is your personality. I know my personal trainer, I largely stuck with him and stick with him is because when I go there, he's just as much my best friend as he is my personal trainer. So that's a selling point for a lot of people. So video is important for that purpose, but also, as you mentioned, every platform now is pushing video. I mean, LinkedIn is getting into the game now with their kind of Reels/TikTok feed of video. And so a large part of my content strategy is vertical video on LinkedIn, because I want to have that bank, that, directory of video content ready when they roll it out to everyone. And so inventory is going to be key there, right? So, but I know not everyone is, camera ready, if you will. It just internally, mentally they're not maybe camera ready. And, that's okay. Early days, like my strategy with what content to create is if you don't want to do it early days, don't do it, because it means if you're begrudgingly going to go create content, you're going to quit because you're not going to want to do it. So it's like a fitness routine. The best fitness routine to stick to is one that you will stick to. Or the best fitness routine to have is one that you're going to stick to. Same thing with your content strategy, is like the best content strategy early days is one you're going to stick to. So what types of content to do really comes down to what a client is going to require to know about you prior to opting into your service. Well, and then also one that you can stick to because the lift to create that content isn't as high, or you're not worried about being on camera and all that kind of stuff. And just as like kind of put a bow on that note is Justin Welsh, who is the like king of LinkedIn, one of the most followed people on LinkedIn, makes multi-millions of dollars per year selling courses. He's not a coach. And I don't think he's posted one video on LinkedIn. What he does, and we're actually going to be creating a breakdown of Justin's strategy in the coming weeks, but what he does is just post these tweet cards where it's just a screen grab of a tweet that he's posted. That's just like a valuable gem of information with a text post attached to it, and then a link off to, hey, learn more at my newsletter. And he just pushes people to his newsletter, and his newsletter is text. And so he makes millions of dollars on LinkedIn every year and through Twitter or X, whatever. But he never creates videos except for his courses. So again, he's not a coach. Yep. So maybe people don't really care to know his personality too much because they just care about what's in his head and not necessarily like, can he hold a conversation?
Nice.
But if you are someone who you're going to have to interact, hold conversations with people like a coach, a consultant, a realtor, video is really important for that reason.
Awesome. Okay. I know we were saying this has been one of my longest episodes ever because you just offer so much great information. And obviously this is something I love to talk about. So I really appreciate it. But I want people to go check out your offer for themselves if they're your ideal client. So Dave, if somebody is maybe trying to check you out, they're not sure if they're your ideal client, are there still resources on zenpost.com that will work for anybody who's interested in content creation?
Yeah, so actually the way that we're promoting zenpost.com is through our own personal brands. So it's me. You can check my LinkedIn out, Dave Polykoff, Polykoff. People get this wrong all the time. But also my business partner, Dustin Carlson. So we're kind of taking our own personal branding methodology and applying it to our service. So Zenpost itself, doesn't necessarily have a lot of content assets, although we are, building a lot of that out over time. But we're really like trying to walk the walk in the sense of if you really want to understand the value that you can get from Zenpost, follow myself and Dustin Carlson on LinkedIn, and you'll see basically what you'll be able to get through our services.
Nice. And I always ask people, I know there's so much more we could talk about, but we'll save that for a part 2 or 3. Do you have a favorite quote, mantra, verse, words that like help you get through every day?
I have a few. If it's cheating, I can say a few. But, I really like this too shall pass. Basically, the concept of whether you're in good times or bad, the pendulum's going to swing the other way. And so a lot of times in good times where I feel everything's like steady and safe, I'll kind of still use that time to prepare for kind of what could come. And then when times are bad, I know that the pendulum will swing back to the good. And that's always kind of kept me grounded and even. And then the other one I really love is the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And that just kind of like is tied to my heart, being that I have the entrepreneurial spirit and all that. And I think when we all think about like, what is the future going to hold for us, being able to know the future's in our hands, we can invent that, and we can shape our future just by action. And so that's always kept me going.
Awesome. I have so much more I want to ask you, but again, we'll save it for the next one. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I've really enjoyed it. I've loved hearing your background, your story, your love of content creation since you started your career, and then leading up to the podcast, Brand Science, and to your personal brand that you're using to help other people learn how to craft their own personal brands. So Dave Polykoff, thank you so much.
Thank you, Erica. This was awesome, and I can't wait for the part 2.
Yes, same. And thank you to everybody who's watching or listening to this episode. I'll be back again in a couple days with another amazing guest to share their story and inspiration for you. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.